Okay. The flight attendant will now be closing the doors, so please turn all your cell phones off. Okay. All right, how is everybody doing today? Good? Yeah, all right. So, well, I'm here to talk about how to walk your JSON data into OpenEdge. How many people here have looked at the autonomous REST adapter? Anybody? A few people? This product actually shows you how to, that product goes into, converts your JSON data into a SQL database. This talk is going to show you how to convert JSON data into an OpenEdge database. How many people here work with OpenEdge? Okay. All right, the questions will get harder. Okay. How many people here have used ProDataSets? Everybody? Work with XML and JSON? Yep. Okay. How many people here are running 11.7? 11.7.4? A couple of hands go down. Okay. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. There's a new tool out, Swagger. If people were at the last session, you saw a little bit about the Swagger interface. We'll talk about that. But I think the reason this talk is important is that you have many different interfaces. Everything today is trying to get data from many different sources. And JSON is really one of the main ways to do it. And so I'm going to talk to you about how to do it into OpenEdge. My name is Paul Guggenheim. A little bit about myself. I've been a Progress evangelist since 1984 and been training Progress programmers since '86. Wrote many Progress courses. One of them is called The Keys to OpenEdge, which is fairly popular. OpenEdge and Sitefinity partner. White Star Software strategic partner, consulting work, and App Pro reseller. Have many different clients in manufacturing, distribution, and gaming, and also nonprofit. Head of the Chicago Area Progress Users Group, and also on the Pug Challenge Steering Committee. All right, so I'm going to try to do my Jimmy John's imitation. This is about a 60-minute talk. I'm going to do it in 45 minutes. But feel free to ask questions. I might put them off to the end, but we'll see how it goes. All right, so this agenda, I'm going to talk about what is JSON, simple and complex, data types, reading and writing JSON to and from ProDataSets with the read JSON method and the write JSON method. And then we're going to go into some more advanced topics. We're also going to talk about using built-in JSON classes to convert data into customized temp tables. Okay? And then I'll show you some walking the JSON tree examples. And then at the very end, I'll show you a tool that I wrote called the PGA JSON Analyzer. Okay? Sound like a plan? All right. All right, so what is JSON? Anyone know what JSON stands for? JavaScript object notation. And it's a lightweight data interchange format. It's an alternative to XML. Okay, so on the screen there you may see in green, I don't know if that's easy to see from the back, but color, green, and then color. This is how you would see it in XML. This is how it would be in JSON. Okay, so that little comma at the end is the way that you close off an attribute. And then you compare that to the tag, and if you have very large tags in XML, you can really save a lot of bandwidth going to JSON versus XML. So I think that's probably the best way to show that. Other features of JSON are self-describing, simple text, more compact as I showed you up there. And it's also easy to learn and understand and read. Okay. OpenEdge does a pretty good job of support for JSON. They started out with built-in parsers so that you can read and write JSON from Temp-Tables to ProDataSets. And they work pretty well. But I'm also going to show you that Progress also provides JSON classes for performing more sophisticated manipulation. So I'm going to show you some good examples of that. All right, so JSON rules for data types. All JSON files must start with either a curly brace, and that's to distinguish themselves from the Moe and the Larry braces. Okay, all right, there's a little humor for you. Okay, so And then there's also the left square bracket and the right square bracket. So my European friends may not be familiar with the Three Stooges, but let's see. Oh, there, yeah. So, and then what else? JSON consists of name-value pairs. Name with quotes, colon, value. You also have simple data types like string, number. Number can include an exponent. In OpenEdge, you have integers, decimals. But in JSON, they just group it all together into a number. Boolean, unquoted, lowercase, either true or false. Null, kind of like the unknown value, also in lowercase. Remember, this is JSON, which is JavaScript. JavaScript is case sensitive. So make sure that if you're doing anything generating JavaScript that, the case does matter on values. All right, so complex data types, objects, comma delimited list of name-value pairs, or an array, which is a comma delimited list of unnamed values, either simple or complex. Okay? How many, is this new to everybody or is this pretty old hat? Okay, so I'm kind of boring you guys right now. Okay. So, and here's some examples. A car could be, color, black, cylinders, so on. And comma delimited list of array for an array could be music, rock, jazz, blues, classical. And those all don't have to be the same data type. Those can be different data types or have complex items within that. Okay? And then if you want certain rules as far as to validate your JSON format, there's a good site called JSON-lint, which can show you what's needed for going to, and you can just go in here and put things, and then click on it, and it'll say whether it's valid or not. So, I mean, it's as simple as this. You just say validate JSON. If you put a left curly brace and a right curly brace, that's enough to have a valid JSON file. So when looking at this, there's a lot of different formats that can occur, but the rules are it can start with either a left curly brace, right curly, and end with right curly brace, or a left square bracket and end with a right square bracket. Okay. All right, so first thing I'm going to show you is how to write JSON to and from Temp-Tables and ProDataSets. Okay, so for a lot of my courses, I use something called the school database, which is a set of students and teachers. Find it a little easier to do certain things than the traditional sports database, so bear with me on that. But so I have students, I have student charges, and I also have charge types. And so I have 3 temp tables within that, and then one student record could have many student charge records, okay, with the student ID being the foreign key. And also the charge table, or the charge type, can also have many student charge records. And so those are the 3 grids here that you see. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and run that. And let's see here. And can anyone recognize that character from anyone fans of 60s TV shows? Probably not, but yeah, so. But that's, yeah, Barney Fife, and then we hear I Dream a Genie, and Elizabeth Montgomery. And yeah, for some reason my sound isn't working now, but that's all right. Okay, so now what I'm going to show you next is write JSON. I'm going to show you that you can write JSON from this ProDataSet. So I just have a button here, and it's going to show you a lot of different features. So for instance, here you have a whole data set. And I can output it, and I could click on that for write picture, but since because the picture file here is actually a field in it's a blob in my student table, but I may not want to show that. So what I'm going to do is just uncheck that, and so that'll reduce the amount of bandwidth. And another, for example, I could also, and the whole data set will do all the records, the student charge, and the charge table. Okay, but also we have the T-student. I could decide here on the T-student that I do want to write the picture and do all the records for example. So I'm going to just do these real quick. On the T-Stu charge, I can pick a particular record here. Let's say if I want to go down to, say, tuition, and it's been a long time, that's 3,000, but anyway, so if I go here and I pick T-Stu charge, I can do maybe the current row, like that. And don't worry about the omit outer objects. I can show you that in a minute, but then I can write that. So you have lots of different choices of things that you can do. So let me just do that again here. There we go. I don't think it took. There we go. So anyway, so if I go into there, I can show you that here's the DS student charge JSON. Let me just refresh that for a minute and show you that you have here. Here's the end of the file, and at the beginning you have all the information. Notice the student record that's output. You don't see the picture field in there, and then you see all the other information, and it works really well. Okay. Just at the same token, you also have the T student information. So here, T student JSON. Here's the one with the picture. So you see there, that's what you can do there. But since that takes a lot of bandwidth, it might be worth it to take that out. So I'm going to show you how you can do that, is to take that out of the output. And that's pretty easily done with the methods that OpenEdge supplies. Okay, and then finally we have the T-Stu charge, a single row. And it just shows you a single row. If you want to see how it is with the omit flag on, I did that previously. If I click on that, you see that it doesn't have the title. So it's like a blank. Here's the title, and then it gets rid of it like that. Okay. All right. So let's continue. And so basically, how does it do all that? Well, there's something called the serialized hidden, which is something that you can set on a field that you don't like a blob or a clob, or maybe some keys. So here I'm going to set for the buffer field called picture, which is in the student table, I'm going to set it to true. For writing all the JSON, I can I can write out the complete data set for the student charge data set using the right JSON. I can specify file, mem pointer, JSON object, JSON array, and then specify a file name or a variable name depending on the situation, and then specify true for formatted. Now, for individual temp tables, you can use that same write JSON method. So the buffer T-charge, you can go here and you can send it out. Now, if you want to just do a single record from any of those, you can say serialized row. Okay. How many people here have used serialized row? Anybody? A few people? Okay. So that's useful if you want to just dump out one record from an entire ProDataSet or from an entire temp table. Yes.
You're talking about pictures and they take up a lot of bandwidth.
Yes.
Would it be much better to send over into the JSON string and you send the URL of the image instead?
Sure. Yeah, you could do that as long as you have logic that would then be able to interpret it and read it back. But you'd have to write that yourself. This is sort of done out of the box. One thing I did forget to mention about JSON. Progress does a base 64 encoding of the JPEG, so it's not spitting out binary into a file. It's actually character based or readable, but it's a long string as you saw. So I hope that answered your question. Okay, all right. So now once we've outputted it, we can now read it back. So the first thing I'm going to show you is reading JSON into a static ProDataSet. So since I know what I just dumped out, I know that the data set consists of students, student charges, and charges. So I'm going to define the same thing. And then I'm just going to simply do a read JSON on that data. So let me just show you that real quick. Okay, so if I run that, here's what it looks like. So I read just a subset of it. Here's what the code looks like. And pretty straightforward. Just say read JSON, tell it what file you want. Empty, you can say empty, append, replace. There's a couple different options that you can do for it in case there's data in the ProDataSet that you want to add to it. So, or merge. Merge is the other one for that. And then here I just simply write it out afterwards. Okay? So that's pretty straightforward. Okay? Now, what if you don't know what the data structure is? Okay, so yeah, here's a summary of what some of the options are for read JSON and the empty, merge, and replace that I've mentioned. But let me show you how you can do it if it's dynamic. Okay, so if I don't know the structure ahead of time, I might want to use a dynamic data set and create it on the fly. So for example, DS hand here is actually a handle variable, and I can say create data set and then read JSON. And then I would just loop through the buffers that are there, and I'd get the first buffer handle, create a query, set the handle on that buffer, do a query prepare, and then read all that data. So that's very powerful. In fact, let me show you an example of that. So here, it's going to prompt me for a JSON file. And then I just click on it, and here's the data. So here are the 4 students, then here are all the charges, and then here are the charge codes. And the way that works is that I just go loop through, and I have several loops, but this is all dynamic, and what I do is I use a down frame where I use field and value. So that's what I'm displaying there. So down here I have the buffer field sub j, and this is, I'm looping through all the number of fields in that particular temp table buffer and getting those values for that dynamic query. So, and so I go, and it works for, let's say, let me try it for a particular temp table. I remember I dumped the T student. Let me do it for that one. So here's just the student table. So I loaded that in. Notice this is the one with the picture. So you see the long string, it got truncated on the display. But there you have it. Okay? So that's all well and good. Now, unlike XML, JSON doesn't have an explicit XSD file, a schema file that's defined. XML does, JSON doesn't. What JSON does is it tries to infer what type of data is, or I should say, Progress's implementation with that with ProDataSets. It has a set of rules. In fact, you may want to check on page 50 and 51 of the JSON documentation. But if you think about a JSON file, it makes sense that any object containing an array of objects in temp table is considered a table, and the entries inside of the rows objects is a column in the temp table. So let me see if I can show you a picture of that. Here, let's see, here, where is it? Here's one where I display agent requests. And agent requests, here's a square bracket, which means, oh, an array. So that means I'm repeating data. I must have a set of records. And each one of these attributes in an object in a JSON must be a column. So that's what Progress uses to determine whether it can read the data into a database. And so there's a set of rules that you can go through to look at this information. So that's interesting. Now, one of the things that's new to 11.7.4, and for those of you that were in the last talk, is a new interface called Swagger. And what Progress has done with that is it's a web API designed to monitor and manage the PAS-OE instance for REST calls. So it gives you a lot of information that you can incorporate in your own application. So it gives you metrics. So how many requests did I do for this one instance? Which ones took a long time? Which ones didn't take a long time? And to access Swagger, all you have to do is your PASOE instance URL, which is your host name and your port. And then if you tack on OE Manager, you simply go there and it brings you up the Swagger interface. Okay, so I have a PASOE running right now, and you can see all the different things. You have different metrics, you can get session stacks, agent statistics, and so on. Let me just do a simple one here with the Swagger interface, getting the agents. So I can do the agents, I can try it out, and I can put in my instance name, and then I click execute, and down here is the URL that it actually used, like that. And then further down is what happened. It gave me the agent result. So it says I have one agent with a process ID of 11808. And it tells you what URL you can use. So I can actually go into my browser, paste it in, and there it is. Okay? So that's where it's coming from. And in fact, I might want to see some of the requests. So I can go in here and I can say 11808/requests. And here you see how many requests. There aren't any requests right now. So would you like me to generate them? Sure.
Show me the money.
All right, I'll show you the money. I'll generate some requests here. So if I go back and run this, and wait, let me go back there, and I'll put in, let's say we'll do 15 requests like that. And now it's generating a bunch of requests randomly. And I go back to here, and I refresh it. If I did everything right, let's see. Now you see all the requests that are, so we got 15 going. So now we have some good data. And I'm saying, okay, this is great. Now we have a way I can get this information loaded in. I can see that this one where I display all the students this is the start time, this is the end time. I want to load that data into my progress database and write some tools to evaluate some metrics. Good idea, right? Okay. So let's try that. So I'm going, well, this read JSON is great. Why don't I just do that? So I'm going to go over here to the read JSON loop. And there was something that I previously did called agent requests. And I'm going to try to load that. And before I do that, let me see. Let me just try to load that and see what happens. So I'm going to put in agent requests and click open. And uh-oh. Error JSON expected bracket. This wasn't supposed to happen. No, it was supposed to happen. I'm not a very good actor, am I? You knew it was. Okay, well, okay, so you have errors here. So you can't use the established read JSON thing because the problem was it didn't come, there wasn't a write JSON that wrote it out from a temp table or ProDataSet. It came from another source, okay? So out there in the World Wide Web, you're going to get JSON files from all over the place that you might need to parse into your application. So that's where these JSON classes come into play. Okay? So you got to do my Elmer Fudd.
There's something screwy around here.
Okay, so now I'm going to show you how we're going to go through and actually read in that specialized request, because this is information I want to read in. Okay, so here's what the file looks like, and here are the errors that we had. And reading a JSON file into a built-in JSON object is what I'm going to show you next. And to do that, Progress has something called the Object Model Parser class. Okay, and it loads JSON data in. And so it can load it in from various places, but we can specify the parse file method if we're loading it in from a file. And then the method returns a JSON construct instance. And this is JSON construct is a type of class that's abstract, but it represents either a JSON object or a JSON array. And if it's a JSON object, that's the one that I'm most interested in. I'm going to put it into a variable called JSON data, which is a type of JSON object. And in read JSON data, I'm just going to simply read it and write it back just to show you that it's the same file. So for instance, here's read JSON data. And it may be hard to see at the back, but that says agent request.json and agent request.out or .o. So I'm just going to hit enter there, and if I pull it into my Eclipse background here, and here's agent requests, and here's agent request.o, you'll see that it looks identical to the agent requests right here. So you can't even see, it actually did flash, but you see it's identical. Okay, so all we did is, here's the actual code, is I do the new object model parser, I parse the file. If it's a JSON object, I cast it to JSON data and I write it out. So now I don't get any errors. I've now successfully wrote it in to a OpenEdge element, which I now can parse it. Okay, so we know that JSON data is hierarchical and it has many leaves and branches that we need to parse. So how do we do that? Okay, so I'm glad you asked that question because I'm going to tell you how to do that now. Okay, not waiting for you guys. All right, because I only have 45 minutes. All right, so first thing I want to do is after you successfully load it, there's something that's useful for you called the getNames method. And what the getName method does, it returns an array of names. So in this case, property names, I'm going to define as character with an extent with a period. Anyone use that? Extent? Okay. So that's an indeterminate array. So you don't have to specify an array variable with a fixed number of extents. And this was done in OpenEdge to, communicate with other languages that are out there that do use that structure. So when I do here JSON data, get names, and put it into property names, at that point it becomes fixed on assignment. So that's the number of elements, and then number of props is that extent of that property names. And once you have that, then you can get the type of value in the JSON data type, whether it could be string, number, Boolean. Progress gives you a number for the get type, and then you can pull those in. So all I have to do is just do a little loop here and do an entry into that list and show you what it looks like. So I'm going to go back here and show you a quick example of that. So in JSON Traverse, for the agent request.json, here's the data right here. So outcome is a string, error message, version is a string, and result is the object. That's the thing that we really want to use. And over here, here's the list of the fields that I'm trying to get to. So if I'm looking at here, these are the things that I want that it got initially. This was the get names that comes from that first level. But that's not going to help us much because the data we really want is down here. Okay? So it's only going to give us the first level, but we have to traverse down. So what do we do then? What's the next step? So that's what I'm going to show you next, is once we know how to get the names, the next thing we have to do is take JSON down the road. Okay, so to take JSON down the road, we have the getJSONObject method, which gets to the object below the current one, and then the getJSONArray, which gets to the array down to the next one. And you can also piggyback these together. So I can say JSON data, getJSONObject, result, and that'll get you down to this result, like that. And then after that, you can say getJSONArray agent request, and that'll get you down to the array. And once you're down to the array, you can then start reading records. So I'm at the array, so then I can say getJSONObject1 and store it into an object. And then I can get the properties of that object and convert those. So, so that's what I'm actually doing in these JSON Traverse 2, is I'm going through and here are all the objects of all those 15 things. So I actually put them into a temp table and then actually exported them out. So down here, here's what the code looks like expanded. Can you see that at the back at all? Okay, so here I said if the property name sub I equals result, then I'm going to get JSON object sub I, which then puts it in result data. And then down here, once I have it in an agent request data, I'm going to loop through and get these JSON objects. And then another thing that Progress does that's really nice is it says get integer, get character, and then get date time TZ. So date time TZ is a useful data type. JSON doesn't have it. It puts it in a string. Progress is smart enough to actually convert that string into that data type. Now, you have to do a little work if you don't know that ahead of time, and that's one of the things my tool does. But you get the idea that you can really just do this by traversing down the elements and getting the information. So, and then at the very end of that, I just dump that temp table request. Okay? How much time do I have, Patty? 13 minutes? Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. So that's any questions on that so far? Okay. So here's that little loop that I was showing you where it dumped it out, and here's the output to it, which is just dumping out that data in the temp table. Okay. You're going, oh, that's great. But I happen to know a little bit about what I was loading in. I knew the agent request coming in, and I kind of knew that I was looking for the word results, and then I knew that the fields beyond that. But sometimes you may not know that. So what we did in that last example is we used a static temp table. So here I went in and I said, oh, where's my temp table? Here, T request, because I knew it had these fields in it. Because I knew what was coming in. But what if you don't know? What if you don't know the structure of the data ahead of time? What if it's got a lot of data? Okay. Well, it may be necessary for you to recursively traverse through JSON data and dynamically create temp tables and ProDataSets and generate a corresponding DF file. And optionally, what if we could create a temporary database containing a database table and dynamically create the data and load it in? What would you think of that idea? Okay, good. I'm glad you guys like that. So, all right, so that's what my PGA JSON Analyzer does. It makes it simpler than ever to connect JSON data to existing OpenEdge applications. I think that deserves a little fanfare. Okay, so it provides an easy way to upload JSON files and enables clear viewing options in a tree format. Okay, so with a click of the button, you can save data into OpenEdge compatible JSON and XML format files. And it also will generate DF files, a temporary database, and it will also dynamically create those tables and actually load the data in. Okay? Yeah, there it goes. Didn't mean to do that again. But okay, so let me show you a demonstration of that. So we're going to go here, and here's the screen, and I can go in and I can specify a JSON file or I can specify a URL. Okay, and I've also stored a few of these. Let me just show you a simple one called test.json, and I'm going to select it. All right, so this one's really simple. You have a few things at the root level. You have pets is actually an array. So here are my two pets, Tank and Frisky. Here, a car is an object. So you see it to the right-hand side, you see the word object. You see the JSON data type and the progress data type. For example, here, if I went back up to timestamp, JSON calls that a string. Progress calls that date time TZ. Children, Vera, Chuck, and Dave. When I'm 64, anyone? Okay. Beatles? Okay. No one. All right, so I can, if I have a lot of room, I could, if I have a lot of data, I might make the font smaller. You can adjust the font, however you want, which is nice. This is using GUI for .NET, and it's a convenient tool. I can then generate the display data. So if I want to just display how this is, and what my tool does is it'll take this and it'll actually put it into tables, with the root being the top table, and each of these, even one that doesn't have multiple records, like a car, is a single object. So it's not an array of objects, it's just an object, but still it might be useful to have a table just based on that information. You know, because then you can use OpenEdge statements to get it out after you've done that. So displaying the data, I'm just going to click Generate, and here's the top level. And that font is probably hard to see in the back, but it says top. The T object names are top, pets, car, and children. And some of those are arrays and some of those are objects. And then here's all the data that's associated with it. Here's the stuff for pets. Here's the single car, Ford Fusion. And then here's children, Vera, Chuck, and Dave, like that. Okay? All right, so why don't we, let's see if we wanted to, we could save that JSON out into a format that we could use the read JSON method later. And we could also create a DF file and actually put it into a temporary database. So I'm going to create the database. I'm going to click Generate, like that. So here I have one that's, is it 120,617. So I actually do a generate that number, and that's actually a file called, a database called PDS 120,617. So let's take a look and see if it actually did the trick here. So over here I have I'm going to prompt for that number. So I'm just going to put in here 120,617. And I'm going to connect to that database. And previously, just to show you what it'll look like, I can actually load in car, top, pets, and children. Oh, before I show you that, let me just show you the data dictionary. Here is the data dictionary where the top shows you these fields. I use a T key and a parent key. So a lot of times JSON won't have keys linking the tables together. But because I want to maintain the hierarchy and show them as parent-child tables, whether it's useful or not, it's still nice to put it in that temporary format for processing. I maintain my own keys. So I add T key and T parent key to each table so that I can relate the information. So here are the children. That's just an array. Cars and objects, you see make, model, and year are the fields that are generated in that. Okay? So, and then here's the data over here. So this is actually that temporary database. So you see here at the upper left corner, you see the car. Here's the top with the timestamp. Pets, you see Tank and Frisky, and the children, Vera, Chuck, and Dave. Like that. Okay, now let's go to something that's maybe a URL. So like one of the ones that you can go to is actual OpenEdge Explorer. That's actually a REST call as well. So anything, there's so many things now that are using REST. So it's just going to multiply. So here, application, admin, and then a password that I need to actually go and read this URL. So now I'm not doing it from a file, I'm doing it from a URL. And I do select, and it will pull all that information in. So here, and these are just different resources. So if you've in your own development environment created a bunch of classic app servers and databases, all of that can be described using the REST call that Progress is supplying you. So you may want to load that in and do something with it, even though it's more abstract. Okay. So anyway, let's go to the one that we were talking about earlier, the agent requests. Let me go to that one. And for that one, just go back. Oh, let me go back to the files and go to agents. And I'm going to change this one from the old process number to 11808. Hopefully that's the right one. Click. And then here are all your agent requests right here. So this is the data that I got real time in this session, all these requests here. And I'm going to go ahead and click a button and let's see what it generates. All right, so it generates a file PDS 952. So I'm just going to go over here, disconnect from that old database, reconnect to 12952. And then read something that reads that information in. So if I want the total amount of elapsed time for each of those reports, here's a report on activities, here's one on courses, employees, teachers, and so on, it can do that. So I have 5 minutes, all right. So that gives you a lot of flexibility of what you're trying to do. Let me go back and just show you one last thing. You can also do searches for, like, if you wanted to see the session ID. If I want to say search for session ID, I can do search. It'll pull up the first one, then I can go next, go to the last one, previous, and so on. So if you have a huge JSON file that you're looking for stuff, you can do a search on it fairly easily. So, all right. Any questions on that so far? All right. Well, in summary, JSON data types come in both simple and complex forms. Reading JSON into Temp-Tables and ProDataSets is easily accomplished using the read JSON method, and as provided that it's generated from the write JSON method. If it wasn't in the write JSON method format, then use built-in JSON classes to convert the data. And the PGA JSON Analyzer demonstrates how to use OpenEdge's built-in JSON classes for large and complex JSON data. So if you want more information on the analyzer, I have some spec sheets on it. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I did? Okay. Yeah, and then I also have some pen lights. And Tony, if you want to heckle me now you can, because I'm done with the talk. Yes.
If you really like Paul's session, it's a little known fact, but we're recording all this.
Yes.
And so a couple weeks after the conference, everyone's going to get links to all the recorded sessions and all the slides.
Thank you. That's a good point. Yeah, heckle. Yeah, Roger's nervous that he's going to miss his flight, so his hand's not coming up. Yeah. All right. All right, well, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it.